In Australia's Port Stephens region of New South Wales, a tragic case has unfolded that has drawn urgent attention to family violence and the risks faced by vulnerable older adults. On Thursday, 18th of December 2025, police attending a home in Fern Bay on Taylor Road found an 88-year-old woman dead inside her residence. Soon after, a 61-year-old man who was known to the woman went to Newcastle Police Station and was subsequently charged with her murder, which authorities are treating as domestic violence related. He appeared via video link in Newcastle local court and was refused bail, with his matter adjourned to February 2026. Police have not only confirmed the charges but are continuing their investigation into the circumstances surrounding the woman's death. The identities of the victim and the accused have been protected in official reporting at this stage, following standard legal practice. Tonight we look at what is known so far, what led to the discovery of the body, how police responded, and what this case reveals about domestic violence involving elderly victims in Australia, and how authorities are handling a case that has both legal and community implications. The investigation began when emergency services were called to a residential address in the Port Stephens area of New South Wales. When police arrived and entered the home, they made a disturbing discovery. An 88-year-old woman was found dead inside the property. The quiet domestic setting immediately stood in contrast to the seriousness of what officers were facing. As first responders assessed the scene, it became clear that the woman's death was not being treated as natural. Police secured the residence, restricting access while specialist officers were called in. A crime scene was formally established, and forensic teams began the careful process of documenting the interior of the home, photographing rooms, examining surfaces, and collecting any material that could later help determine what had occurred. At this early stage, authorities were deliberately cautious about what they disclosed. Police confirmed only that the woman had been found deceased, and that further examinations were required to establish the cause and circumstances of her death. No details were released about injuries or the events leading up to the discovery, as investigators worked to preserve the integrity of the case. As the investigation progressed, attention shifted to a 61-year-old man known to the victim. According to confirmed reporting, the man later attended a police station voluntarily. Following further inquiries and consultation with detectives, he was taken into custody. Police alleged the death was domestic violence related, a classification that immediately elevated the seriousness of the case and placed it within a broader national concern. Shortly afterward, the man was formally charged with murder. He was brought before a court where a magistrate considered the circumstances of the case and refused bail, citing the gravity of the allegations. Authorities confirmed that the accused would remain in custody ahead of further court proceedings. Throughout this initial phase, police made a deliberate decision to withhold the identities of both the victim and the accused. Officials explained that this was in line with legal standards and the sensitive nature of domestic violence cases, particularly those involving elderly victims. Investigators also emphasized that releasing limited information was necessary to ensure the investigation could proceed without interference. By the end of the first day, what had begun as a response to a single residence had developed into a full homicide investigation. Detectives continued gathering statements, awaiting forensic results, and examining the personal circumstances surrounding the victim and the accused. While many details remained unclear, the focus of the case was now firmly established. An elderly woman dead inside her own home and a domestic setting under intense scrutiny. Following the murder charge, the accused was brought before the court, marking the first formal legal step in a case that had already drawn significant public attention. The 61-year-old man appeared in court shortly after his arrest, where prosecutors outlined the seriousness of the allegation and the circumstances under which the charge had been laid. Given the nature of the case, the appearance was brief but critical. During the hearing, the court was told that the charge related to the death of an 88-year-old woman found inside her home in Port Stephens. Prosecutors argued that the alleged offense fell within the category of domestic violence-related murder, a factor that carries significant weight in Australian courts. As a result, the issue of bail became a central focus almost immediately. After considering submissions, the magistrate refused bail, citing the gravity of the charge and the need to ensure the integrity of the legal process. The decision meant that the accused would remain in custody while the case moved forward. Police confirmed that the matter would return to court at a later date, as investigators continued to prepare evidence and formal briefs. Authorities have remained cautious about releasing further details, emphasizing that the case is now before the courts. Both the victims and the accused's identities continue to be withheld in accordance with legal protections and standard practice in sensitive domestic violence cases. Police have stressed that the accused is entitled to the presumption of innocence and that all allegations will be tested through the judicial system. With the bail decision made, the investigation entered a new phase. Detectives are now working alongside prosecutors, compiling forensic findings, witness statements, and background information that will eventually be presented in court. While the initial appearance answered some procedural questions, it left many others unresolved, particularly regarding what happened inside the home in the moments before the woman's death. As the legal process unfolds, the case will move slowly and deliberately. Each step, from preliminary hearings to future court dates, will shape how and when further details emerge. For now, the focus remains on due process, evidence gathering, and ensuring that the matter proceeds in a way that is both lawful and just. As investigators continued their work, the case increasingly came to be viewed not just as an isolated homicide, but as part of a broader and deeply entrenched issue: domestic and family violence in Australia. Police have classified the alleged killing of the 88-year-old woman as domestic violence related, a designation that immediately reframed public understanding of what happened inside the Port Stephens home. Violence that occurs within domestic settings is often more complex, more hidden, and more difficult to detect than crimes committed in public spaces. What has drawn particular concern in this case is the age of the victim. Elder abuse, especially when it overlaps with domestic violence, is widely recognized as one of the most underreported forms of harm. Older victims may rely on family members or caregivers for daily support, housing, or medical assistance, making it harder to speak out or seek help. In many cases, warning signs are subtle or misunderstood, allowing dangerous situations to persist unnoticed. In communities like Port Stephens, such incidents can be especially jarring. The region is often associated with coastal calm and close-knit neighborhoods, where serious violent crime is not part of daily expectation. The discovery of an elderly woman dead inside her own home has therefore unsettled residents, forcing a confrontation with the reality that domestic violence can exist quietly, even in places that appear peaceful on the surface. The case has also prompted renewed discussion about how domestic violence is identified and addressed by authorities. Police have acknowledged that many domestic incidents come to light only after significant harm has occurred. When elderly victims are involved, the challenge can be even greater, as abuse may be mistaken for health decline, accidents, or the natural vulnerabilities of aging. These complexities place added responsibility on communities, healthcare providers, and social services to remain alert to signs that something may be wrong. Beyond the immediate community, the case has resonated nationally, adding to ongoing concerns about domestic violence across New South Wales and the wider country. Advocacy groups have pointed out that while public attention often focuses on younger victims, older Australians are not immune to domestic abuse, and in some cases may face even greater barriers to protection and justice. As the accused remains in custody and the matter proceeds through the courts, support organizations have reiterated the importance of awareness and early intervention. They have urged family members, neighbors, and professionals who work with older people to take concerns seriously and to report suspected abuse. The tragedy in Port Stevens has become a reminder that domestic violence is not defined by age, gender, or geography, but by patterns of control and harm that can remain hidden until it is too late. In this context, the case now carries significance beyond its legal outcome. It has highlighted gaps in visibility, protection, and prevention, and reinforced the need for continued attention to domestic violence in all its forms, including those that affect the most vulnerable members of society. With the accused now formally charged and bail refused, the case has shifted from an emergency police response into a prolonged investigative and legal phase. Detectives have confirmed that their work is continuing behind the scenes, with a focus on consolidating evidence that can withstand scrutiny in court. While the charge itself marks a significant step, police have been clear that it does not signal the end of the investigation, but rather the beginning of a more detailed and methodical process. At present, authorities have released only limited information about the circumstances of the woman's death. The exact cause of death has not been made public, and police have declined to describe the condition in which the 88-year-old woman was found inside her home. Investigators are awaiting forensic results, which are expected to play a central role in clarifying how and when she died. These findings will help establish a precise timeline, a critical component in any homicide case. Another key area of focus remains the domestic context in which the alleged offense occurred. Police have classified the case as domestic violence related, but have not disclosed details about the relationship history between the victim and the accused. Such information, while potentially important, is often withheld at early stages to protect the integrity of the case and the privacy of those involved. Detectives are expected to examine past interactions, living arrangements, and any previous contact with authorities or support services. As the investigation continues, prosecutors will begin assembling a formal brief of evidence. This process involves coordinating forensic reports, police statements, and any expert assessments that may be required. At the same time, the defense will be preparing its own response, examining the evidence and identifying issues that may be raised in future court proceedings. These parallel processes will unfold largely out of public view, with details emerging only through scheduled court appearances. The accused remains in custody as the matter progresses through the court system. Future hearings are expected to address procedural matters before the case advances toward more substantive stages. Throughout this period, police and legal authorities have reiterated that the presumption of innocence applies, and that conclusions about responsibility can only be reached through the judicial process. For the wider community in Port Stevens, the slow pace of the legal system can feel frustrating. Serious crimes often generate intense attention in their early days, but answers rarely come quickly. Police have urged the public to avoid speculation, warning that unverified claims can complicate investigations and cause further harm. As it stands, the case remains defined by unresolved questions. What exactly occurred inside the home? What circumstances led to the woman's death? And how will the evidence presented shape the outcome in court? Those answers will emerge gradually through forensic analysis, legal argument, and judicial oversight. Until then, the case remains open, moving forward step by step within the confines of the justice system. In the end, the case from Port Stevens is not defined only by a charge laid or a bail decision made. It is defined by a life lost behind closed doors in a place meant to offer safety. An 88-year-old woman found dead inside her own home has become part of a broader and troubling pattern, one where domestic violence can remain unseen until it turns fatal. For investigators, the work continues methodically and largely out of public view. Evidence is being tested, timelines refined, and legal processes followed step by step. Courts will determine what can be proven, not what is assumed. Until that process is complete, many questions will remain unanswered. For the community, the case serves as a quiet but powerful reminder that domestic violence does not always look the same. It does not belong to one age group, one type of household, or one location. It can exist in silence, particularly when the most vulnerable are involved. As the legal system moves forward, responsibility now lies with evidence, due process, and accountability. Justice, when it comes, will not arrive through headlines or speculation, but through the careful work of courts and investigators. Until then, this case remains open, not just as a legal matter, but as a reminder of the cost of violence that goes unseen and the importance of awareness before tragedy becomes irreversible.